I tried getting every achievement in the adventure cyberpunk game Stray and then getting a refund from Steam. I've seen a few other people create these kind of challenges, and since I enjoyed them so much, I thought I would try and make my own. If you didn't already know, Steam's refund policy states that if you own a game for less than 2 weeks and play it for less than 2 hours, you can get your money back. So with this challenge in mind, I set aside a couple of days to get familiar with the game and figure out exactly what would need to be done. Ultimately, it all came down to these main tasks: complete the game in under 2 hours, gather all B12's memories, collect all 6 badges, and scratch in every chapter, as well as a bunch of miscellaneous chapter specific achievements which I would have to unlock as I progress through the game. It's worth mentioning at this point that I will not be including the productive day achievement, which requires the player to sleep for 1 hour real time. So with all that said, I bought Stray on a brand new Steam account, installed a mod to change the colour of my cat to black, and dived straight into chapter 1 Inside the Wall. In this chapter, the game is really just introducing you to the button layout, so there's not an awful lot you need to do. I made sure to scratch this tree for the territory achievement before navigating through the inside of the wall. I eventually fell off this pipe, and despite the support from these 3 spectators, I lost my grip and landed in chapter 2 Dead City. After what seemed like forever, I finally regained my strength, left the pile of rubbish I landed in, and started making my way through the city. On my way, I completed a few simple puzzles, smashed a tin of blue paint through a window, and marked my territory on someone else's rug. It didn't take long before I was introduced to these tech-like creatures called Zurks, who appeared to be eating this robot alive. Oh. I'm going to say that wasn't our fault. And before long, I found myself trying to escape a huge group of them without being caught for the achievement Can't Catch Me. This is the hardest section in the game with regards to this run. And after dying and dying and dying, I unintentionally picked up the No More Lives achievement before eventually managing to complete the pursuit a few tries later. I continued following the fluorescent lights until I reached a seemingly dead end, but after removing the fan's power source, I jumped between the blades into chapter 3, The Flat. I picked up the scratch point, walked all over this keyboard, and eventually helped move B12's AI into a small drone. In return, B12 gave me a backpack and the ability to use a flashlight, and I used the flashlight to find the code to break out of the flat. It was here that I picked up the first of 27 memories in the game, along with a postcard of an exotic beach which I would need to progress the story. Shortly after, I ziplined past a group of Zurks and into chapter 4, The Slums. By this point, I'd already used up a huge portion of the time, which meant I would have to complete the remaining 9 chapters in around 95 minutes. But I wanted to see the challenge out till the end, even if it meant that I couldn't get a refund. The good news was that if there was ever a chapter to make up some lost time, it would be The Slums. So I continued on, eventually convincing the Guardian I wasn't a Zurk, and after showing him the postcard we found, they told us where to go to progress the story. I decided to pick up the scratch point here and nuzzled the Guardian's leg to kickstart the cat's best friend achievement. Next up, I dunked this basketball for the Boom Shakalaka achievement, picked up the first of 4 energy drinks, and unlocked the safe for the first sheet music, which I then gave to Marosk. Whilst listening to Marosk play the unreadable sheet music, I put my head in this paper bag for the Curiosity Killed the Cat achievement, and when I eventually got it off, scaled this building for another memory. After reaching the top, I dropped into Balthazar's flat, knocked over this stack of boxes, and picked up the notebook that would need to progress the story. I left this flat, took the zipline down, and picked up another memory of the robot with the suitcases. I then decided to jump into Clementine's flat, pick up the 3rd sheet music, and also Clementine's notebook. Picked up the 4th sheet music, and shortly after picked up another energy drink, and cycled through about 300 TV programs until I got the telechat achievement. I never remember how many channels there actually is. We're just going to keep pressing it until the achievement unlocks. There we go. Inside the bookstore, I picked up another sheet music and unlocked the safe to find the last notebook. Since I was already on the roof, I thought I might as well make this robot drop the paint. Sorry. And now that the door was open, we could pick up the super detergent, which we would need to trade later. We also need to get the RIP Humans memory and another energy drink from up here. And after picking up the third energy drink, I ended up picking up the fourth energy drink because I almost forgot about it, before visiting Marusk to hand in another sheet music. I have to do this 8 times in total, so I'm not going to show every single time, but just know that if I run past Marusk and he isn't already playing a sheet of music, I'm going to hand him one that I found earlier. After that, I visited Azuz, and he sold me everything he had for a super detergent and 4 energy drinks. In return, I got some electric cable, another sheet music, and a memory. After my interaction with Azuz, I realised I still had 3 memories left to collect, which was one more than I had expected. I honestly had no idea which one I was missing, so I decided to check a few obvious locations since having to retrace my steps completely would probably waste too much time. Luckily, I found one in the bar along with another sheet music, and since I was already down that side of the slums, I decided to visit Grandma to progress the Cat's Best Friend achievement and traded her the electric cable for the hand-knitted poncho. I was kind of over the chapter at this point, so I thought it would be a good time to progress the story, knowing that I could grab the rest of the collectibles when I revisited the area in a couple of chapters' time. I climbed my way up to Momo's house and raided it for another sheet music and memory, before eventually introducing myself. I showed Momo his friend's notebooks that we collected earlier, and he gave us a transceiver and sent us out into chapter 5 rooftops to fix a broken antenna. The first thing I did in this chapter was tick off the scratching location, since it's the only place in the chapter I could do it, and this filled me with a bunch of confidence. However, I was quickly humbled about 30 seconds later when I died to a small group of Zurks. This actually hadn't happened to me before, so I don't know why it did happen, but I did manage to move past them pretty easily on the second attempt. Shortly after, I scaled this huge wall and picked up the first of 2 missable memories in the chapter. I found myself trying to lure a bunch of Zurks into this trap when I picked up the achievement A Little Chatty for meowing 100 times. There we go, our 100th meow. I made light work of the rest of that area despite not actually trapping every single Zurk. And about a minute later, I picked up the second memory of the chapter. This is the memory I always forget about, so I'm glad that I remembered it here. And after ascending one more level, I spent about 20 minutes running across the top of a rooftop avoiding Zurks until my elevator arrived. I put the transceiver Momo gave me into the antenna, and just like that we pick up the second core memory of the game, which basically means in the first 45 minutes of playing, we've only completed about 40% of the game. When we get off the zipline, we find ourselves back in Momo's flat in chapter 6, The Slums Part 2. Now, it would have been normal for Momo to wait for our return, but instead he left us a note telling us to meet him at the bar. I start to make my way there, but not before a quick visit to Marusk to hand in another sheet music. After that, I meet Momo, he contacts his good friend Balthazar, and he tells us that we need to go through the sewers to meet him. It turns out that to get to the sewers, we need to convince Seamus, this guy, to help us find his dad, so that we can gain access to a device that allows us to kill Zurks. It's all getting pretty confusing at this point, but trust me, it starts to make a lot of sense over the course of the next chapter. For whatever reason, Seamus doesn't want to help us, so he leaves the bar and locks himself inside the house. But Momo won't take no for an answer, and he forces me to break inside and show Seamus some proof that might help us find his dad. I find Doc's secret lab, and inside I find a broken tracker that I show Seamus. Since the tracker is broken, it doesn't really solve any issues for us, but I happen to know a guy who knows a guy. I sprint out to the other side of the city and scratch on this mysterious door, which I'm hoping counts as a scratching location for this chapter. Once inside, I pick up the final sheet music and the final optional memory for the area. I give the poncho that Grandma gave me earlier to this shivering robot called Elliot, and immediately ask him to fix the tracker in return. With the tracker fixed, I return to Seamus, who directs me towards chapter 7, Dead End. I nuzzle the 2 robots standing around the fire, and just before the chapter ends, Seamus hands me the Outsider badge. In the beginning of this chapter, I run along to the left and grab the missable memory of the concrete wall before taking a swift 180. I end up experiencing some PTSD from the Zurk chase in chapter 2, but luckily there's no achievement linked with this section. After about a minute of ducking, dipping and dodging Zurks, I managed to escape only to end up on top of a trolley travelling towards a steep drop. And just like before, I fall a long way down, eventually struggle to my feet and shake it off like the trooper that I am. I climb my way out of the pit and pass through this sneaky hole in the fence to find another memory that I always seem to forget about. And before long I find myself in Doc's house giving him the fright of his life. I interact with this weird mannequin and B12 is somehow reminded of human children, but it does give me another memory. I scratch Doc's wall to progress the territory achievement. This is another scratch point I always seem to forget, so I'm glad that I've picked it up. And Doc gives me a spare fuse which I'll need to use to repair the generator. Done. With the generator fixed, Doc's weapon now works against the Zurks, and he lays down some covering fire until I can get back to safety. He does his best, but I still come close to death since I am being a little bit impatient. Back at the safe house, Doc installs B12 with the Zurk killing technology, and I decide to test it out on these caged Zurks. Damn. After leaving the safe house, this shutter door won't open from the outside, so I have to leave Doc so that I can operate it from the inside. The whole task honestly takes around 20 seconds, but when the shutter finally opens, I find Doc in this compromised position due to a couple of Zurks. Pretty embarrassing, honestly. Again! I kill all the Zurks and progress through the area until I make it back to the slums where Doc and Seamus are reunited. I give the final sheet music to Marusk, and in return I get the music badge and another achievement. Just after, I meet Momo on this tiny raft, and we venture off into Chapter 8, The Sewers. Now, The Sewers is normally an easy chapter, however, since I'm trying to get all of the achievements, I need to pick up the Pacifist achievement, which requires me to complete the whole chapter without killing any Zurks. That means there's going to be a lot of this going on. Luckily, I survive and we continue on until we reach this metal door, and of course it won't open, so Doc has to do it manually. It's here that I pick up the catapult achievement for jumping 500 times. For whatever reason, Momo decides he can't continue and he hits me with the whole go on without me speech. Once inside, I take a small detour to pick up the first missable memory of the chapter, and then come straight back. I don't think we can afford to have any more deaths here. It's all smooth sailing until I get into the busier sections where I have no choice but to pass through groups and groups of Zurks. Surprisingly, it all goes pretty well, and not long after I find myself picking up a memory of this, whatever this is. I end up in an open room where I have to activate 2 levers on opposite sides of the room in order to progress. I don't actually have a strategy going into this, so I just wing it. I run in a straight line down one side, activate the switch, head back, and do the exact same on the other side. And somehow it works. With the door now open, I find myself a nice piece of cardboard to scratch to progress the territory achievement, and shortly after I get stuck in this cutscene. Whilst B12 has a staring contest with the world's largest eyeball, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, GPORTAL. GPORTAL provide industry-leading dedicated servers for over 100 games including Ark, Farming Simulator, Minecraft and Valheim. When I first discovered them, I had never set up my own server before, and I found their platform really easy to navigate. It only took me around 5 minutes from start to finish to get my community server up and running. The best part about their servers is that they allow you to create your own server configuration, depending on how long you need the server and how many players you need to support, meaning you never pay for more than what you need. If you're interested, you can save 10% by using my referral link, which you can find in the video description or on my channel. Anyway, back to the video. Here I am getting dominated by Zurks when B12 swoops in like a hero and saves my life. Unfortunately for him, this comes with a price and he overheats in the process, so now it's my turn to be a hero. I grab B12 and make a dash for the exit. Despite the countless group of Zurks in my way, the intended route is quite obvious and I manage to avoid contact throughout the whole section. Before I know it, the Pacifist achievement unlocks, signalling the end of the chapter. Now there's 46 minutes left on the clock as we move into Chapter 9, Ant Village, and I'm really starting to second guess whether I can complete this challenge or not. I cross the bridge into the village itself and a core memory reminds B12 that he was once a human. This would normally be fine, but his shocked state means that I can't utilise him to collect memories, so I have to move past one until he snaps out of it. At a slightly higher altitude I meet Balthazar, who tells us that we must reach the top of Ant Village to reach Midtown where we'll find Clementine, and he gives us a picture of her. At this point B12 pulls himself together and I have to retrace my steps to collect the memory and the scratching location. Before I move on, there's 2 more things that I need from Ant Village. One is a badge for collecting 3 coloured flowers, starting with this purple one, and the other is an achievement for ruining a game of Mahjong. Kinda like this. At the bottom of the village I find myself a red flower, and after climbing all the way back up, I find a yellow flower heading close to the bar. With all the flowers now collected, I interact with Mallow and he gives me the plant badge in return for the flowers. Now that I have the badge, there's nothing more to do in this chapter, and so I continue my ascent towards Chapter 10, Midtown. I start Midtown in an abandoned subway station, and it's here that B12 unlocks the 4th core memory. On the way out of the station, I grab the first of 6 optional memories in the chapter, and nuzzle this seated robot to finally unlock the Cat's Best Friend achievement, which I've been grafting since chapter 4. I leave the station and take a right into the shop as the chapter overlay pops. Inside I decipher a hidden safe code written on this poster and unlock the safe above to find the cat badge. After this I'm obviously in some sort of badge hunting mood because I decide to ascend the side of this building to find the police badge which is located inside this sneaky jail cell. Shortly after I pick up 2 easy memories, one located in the ceiling of the food shop and another in the ceiling of the hairdressers. On my way to meet Clementine, I talk to Simon, who asks me to get rid of 3 security cameras in exchange for a cassette tape, which I'll need soon to progress the story. I make light work of the 3 cameras and scratch a random door to secure the territory location for this chapter. Next up I enter Clementine's apartment where she nearly attacks me with a lamp. I give her the picture Balthazar gave me and she tells me her plan. Her plan is to break into the Sentinels factory, steal an atomic battery and use it to power the subway we found earlier. She hands me a note to enable us to reach out to her contact and we leave, picking up the cassette tape from Simon on the way out. For this next part I'll need to grab a worker jacket and a worker helmet before I can progress with Clementine's contact, so I decide to grab them first to save some time. I head to the bar where I find a sleeping robot and I smash a crate of beer over his head to wake him up, since I'll need him to grab the worker helmet. Whilst he's getting to his feet, I switch my focus to the jacket, sprint to the retail store and put Simon's cassette tape into the radio. Understandably, the store owner heads to the back of the store to turn it off because, let's face it, it's awful. Whilst he's doing that, I make use of the time by stealing a pink worker jacket from the mannequin. Back at the hat store, the drunken robot finally shows up for work and I trick him into breaking me into the store by hiding inside this cardboard box. Once inside, I steal the worker helmet. I now have everything I need to break into the factory, so it's here I reach out to Clementine's contact, Blazer. I hand him the worker jacket and the worker helmet and he gets changed. I jump inside another cardboard box and Blazer attempts to smuggle me into the factory. Once inside I have 2 main tasks, pick up the 6th and final badge and complete the section without alerting any sentinel. I start making my way through the factory knowing that I'm running really low on time now, so to try and pull back some time I start taking risks that I normally wouldn't, and this very nearly kills the entire run right here. Somehow it doesn't register that I'm stood inside the sentinel's vision, so I live to fight another day. I move through the chapter, eventually finding some worker keys on a half sunken barrel, and I hand them back to the rightful owner. This earns me the final badge in the game and the badge's achievement unlocks in the process. I managed to make it through the rest of the chapter without being caught, and after dismantling the security procedures protecting the atomic battery, I steal it and make my escape. Back in the centre of Midtown now, I grab the Sentinel memory which is only available after completing the factory section, and after that it's time to revisit Clementine, making sure to avoid all the Sentinel inside the apartment block. But after all that effort to get to Clementine's apartment, she's not actually there. Instead, she left me a secret message to meet her and Blazer at the nightclub. So I take the same route out of the apartment block, making sure to avoid the Sentinels, and pick up the sneak attack achievement as I leave. On the way to the nightclub, I pick up another optional memory, and not long after that, I enter the nightclub through an upper level window. Inside there's a few things I need to do before finding Clementine. I start by going down this drink chute to collect the chapter's final memory, and then trade this robot a strange drink for a lever handle. Next I grab this loose record and distract the DJ long enough to place it on the decks and scratch it for the scratch achievement. After that I use the lever handle to move into the ceiling space towards the VIP section, manoeuvring across the lights to get there. And when I finally arrive, I find Clementine tied up. "You alright, Clementine?" and Blazer working alongside the Sentinels. It takes 2 Sentinels to take me down, but they do eventually take me down, and when I finally awake, I find myself locked inside a small cage in Chapter 11 jail. I break myself free by using my body to smash the cage against the wall, and after passing through this ominous grating, the overlay for the chapter appears. In Chapter 11 there's no miscellaneous achievements and the scratch location is required as part of the story, so all I have to do here is grab the game's final optional memory and complete the chapter as quickly as possible. I bypass a couple of Roman Sentinels and before long I find Clementine locked up in a cell. She points me in the direction of the key and around 40 seconds later she's free. In the next room a cutscene triggers showing B12 locked up looking in a very bad spot. Obviously we can't leave him, so Clementine and I formulate a plan to break him out. The plan is Clementine leaves me to do all the work and I try my best to save B12 without being blasted to death. It's fair to say this plan goes pretty poorly the first time around and I end up picking up another death. By the time I get back into the area my remaining time is now less than 20 minutes. Luckily this run goes pretty smoothly and I manage to avoid all the Sentinel and cut the power to B12's cage. With no time to waste, I run practically straight towards B12 and grab him in one smooth motion. Oh, that was perfectly done. I make it back to Clementine, and we all make a move towards the exit. Clementine throws a brick through the window, blocking our path. What a shot, Clementine. And this allows me to climb through and open the doors from the other side. We make it out into the courtyard, where I have to lure sentinels into jail cells and lock them inside with the help of B12. This section fills me with anxiety normally, but even more so now that I only have 18 minutes left to complete the game, so any mistake could cost me the run and the money I spent on the game. I lock up the first sentinel fairly easily, and in between the two sections of courtyard I grab the final optional memory of the game. The second half of the courtyard is slightly harder since I have to trap 2 sentinels here rather than just 1. Close. Did we do it? We got both. Nice. It's a close call, but I get away with it, and after passing through the door at the end of the courtyard, we find ourselves one door away from freedom. I scratch the door of the tuk-tuk and Clementine takes the hint, reversing towards the fence to allow me to jump over and open the door. This sets off the alarm and several sentinels come swarming into the area. A death here would be really bad. Clementine starts to take off without me, and I'm forced to chase her down with less than 50 minutes left on the clock. Oh, they're focusing on me. No! Give it my best shot, but a stray bullet connects and I'm forced to retry the section. The second attempt goes much smoother and I manage to make it onto the back of the tuk-tuk, triggering another cutscene. We drive through central midtown towards the subway station, and when we arrive, Clementine sacrifices herself to allow us to escape and hands us the key to the subway. I sprint back to the lower levels of the subway and place the atomic battery back into the system. The subway starts to power up, and the subway key Clementine gave us gets us into chapter 12 control room. By the time the subway doors open, I have just short of 11.5 minutes left to complete the game, and the final chapter has a lot of cutscenes. I sprint through the station towards the control room, and when I arrive I grab myself a little robot to stand on. B12 grants me access to the wiring, and I scratch it in order to open the door, picking up the long awaited territory achievement in the process. Inside the control room, B12 remembers that a plague wiped out the humans and everyone was forced to transfer their consciousness into robots if they wanted to survive. Which means I unlock the I Remember achievement and receive a shiny new backpack from B12. In the control room, I'm firstly required to turn on all the computers by standing on the keyboards, but that only initiates the safety protocol. The next bright idea is to damage all the wiring associated with the safety protocol to enable B12 to override the system. There's 3 locations that I need to do this for, but each one takes a bigger toll on B12. I carry him to the workstation to disable the alarm, but this action costs him the rest of his strength, and we sadly lose B12. Meanwhile, though the city's free, Momo and the rest of the robots get to see the sun for the first time, and when I awake, I have just 5 minutes to make it to the end of the game. I sprint out of the control room and towards the exit, and once I'm free, the final 2 achievements pop. Eye Opener for completing the game and opening the city, and I Am Speed for completing the game in under 2 hours. You can see from my Steam profile that it took me 117 minutes to complete the game, and during that time I managed to unlock 23 out of 24 achievements, which is every achievement except the Productive Day achievement for sleeping 1 hour real time. So for the moment we've all been waiting for, let's see if Steam will refund us for the game. I filled out the refund page listing my reason for return as too easy, and I waited anxiously for a whole 54 minutes before receiving an email saying that my refund request had been approved. Result: